Welcome to Thinking Deeper by 6-7. Today we are plunging into the ultimate cosmic rivalry, God versus Satan. We're looking at John Milton's epic Paradise Regained and the deep theology of the Jehovah's Witnesses to explore how religion tries to solve the ultimate puzzle, the problem of evil. How do you defend the idea of an all-powerful, loving God in a world packed with suffering? For centuries, these narratives have tried to answer the exact questions that drive modern atheism. Is God actually fair? Is he really in control? Or is the devil actually the main character pulling the strings of human history?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's the ultimate philosophical heavyweight match, right? The way these texts handle the concept of an adversary, well, it reveals a tremendous amount about human psychology.
Oh, absolutely.
And, the architecture of belief systems, and really the lengths humanity will go to in order to make sense of a deeply chaotic, often painful world.
Right, so our mission for this deep dive is to basically extract the philosophical and psychological nuggets from these texts. We want to evaluate how different traditions frame the character of God by using the devil.
Kind of like using the devil as a mirror, in a way.
Exactly. Or, maybe as a necessary shield against the harsh realities of existence. And before we really get going, if you like my channel, please subscribe and press the like button, because we are about to navigate some incredibly dense, intellectually demanding territory.
We really are. And to truly evaluate how these sources defend God's character against the problem of suffering, we must first understand how the ultimate scapegoat, Satan, was actually constructed over time.
Because he wasn't always the guy with the pitchfork?
Right, not at all. The devil you picture in your mind's eye is fundamentally different from the entity described in the earliest texts. It was built piece by piece over centuries.
Yeah, looking at the Old Testament material in our sources, it completely upends the traditional narrative. I mean, the Hebrew term Satan wasn't a pitchfork-wielding villain.
Right.
It actually appears just 17 times, and it simply means opposer or adversary. It's a title, not a proper name.
The linguistic context is so vital here. That title could refer to, well, just a human political enemy, or it could be a celestial being.
Like in the Book of Job.
Exactly. The Book of Job provides the clearest early picture. This Satan figure is actually an angel working openly in God's own celestial court.
Wait, working for God?
Yeah, acting as a sort of celestial prosecutor subordinate to Yahweh. His entire job is to question human integrity. He only moves against humanity with God's explicit, direct authorization.
Okay, let's unpack this. So originally, Satan was basically God's internal auditor, just checking the books in the celestial court. But after Persian influence, he gets promoted into a cosmic supervillain.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that shift to dualism was a historical and philosophical necessity. The theological landscape changed dramatically during the Second Temple period.
Right, when the Jewish people interacted with the Persian Empire.
Exactly. The dominant Persian religion was Zoroastrianism, and it introduced strict dualism.
Which means, two opposing forces.
Yeah, a supreme good god named Ahura Mazda versus an evil spirit named Angra Mainyu. And this framework eventually morphed into the Yahweh versus Satan dynamic we know today.
Which makes sense, because if you want to claim God is entirely good, which is a core debate in atheistic evaluations of religion, you run into a huge problem.
The problem of suffering.
Right. If God is only light, where does the darkness come from? You need a separate, powerful entity to take the blame for the darkness in the world.
Creating a scapegoat protects the benevolence of the Creator. But, it instantly opens a secondary philosophical trapdoor.
How so?
Well, if Satan was created to take the blame, how do modern religious frameworks explain why an all-powerful God allows him to just rule the earth?
Oh, wow, yeah.
Which brings us directly to the Jehovah's Witness explanation of human suffering. They've built an intricate theology to plug that exact loophole.
Right. Their framework attempts to answer the theodicy problem, basically trying to justify God's goodness in the face of evil. And they do this by framing Satan essentially as the protagonist pulling the strings of human history.
In their doctrine, Satan's rebellion in Eden wasn't just, evil for the sake of it. It was a direct, calculated challenge to Jehovah's right to rule, or his sovereignty.
He basically claimed humans could govern themselves better without God.
Exactly. And our sources highlight this really specific analogy they use, the teacher and the rebel student analogy.
Oh, right. Imagine a teacher instructing a class on a complex math equation. Then a rebellious student stands up and claims the teacher's methods are totally wrong.
Right, and he insists he knows a better way. and a few other students agree and join the rebellion.
Now, the teacher could just expel the kid, right?
Sure, he is the authority.
But if he does that, the rest of the class might wonder if the rebel was actually right. They might think the teacher is just insecure or incompetent.
So, to prove the student is unqualified, the teacher steps back. He hands the chalk over and allows the student to show the class his method, proving to everyone who is actually right.
And in this theology, the classroom is the universe, and the watching students are millions of observing angels. This dynamic is used to explain 6,000 years of human suffering. God allowed Satan to rule the world simply to prove a point to the devil and the angels.
And they apply that same framework to the book of Job. God allows Satan to destroy Job's health, his wealth, and his children, just to prove Job's loyalty isn't out of convenience.
Here's where it gets really interesting. If a real-world teacher acted like Jehovah in this analogy, they wouldn't let a rebel student harm the rest of the class for 6,000 years.
Yeah, they'd be arrested.
Exactly. Doesn't this specific defense actually fuel atheistic arguments that God is either not benevolent or simply gambling with human lives to protect his own ego?
It absolutely does. I mean, this is a classic theodicy, right? But evaluating it critically reveals a God whose need to win an argument supersedes the immediate prevention of human suffering.
It treats human history like one big, painful court case.
Yeah, humanity is reduced to circumstantial evidence presented to a jury of angels.
It's a pretty chilling thought experiment. But while the JW framework has God stepping back to let Satan fail, our other source takes a totally different approach. John Milton's Paradise Regained shows God stepping directly into the wilderness to face Satan head-on through Jesus.
Right, Milton's work is this magnificent psychological counterpoint. The story focuses on Jesus fasting for 40 days in the wilderness.
Starving, basically.
Yeah, completely deprived. And the theological dilemma Milton tackles is how Jesus can be fully God with perfect wisdom, yet fully man, capable of real hunger, pain, and actual temptation.
Because if the temptation isn't real, it's just theater.
Exactly. So Satan first appears, not as a monster, but disguised as an old man gathering firewood, tempting a starving Jesus to turn rocks into bread.
Just a basic appeal to survival.
Right. But beneath that, it's a test. Will Jesus rely on God, or will he selfishly use his divine power to fix his own human discomfort?
And Jesus refuses.
He refuses. So then Satan goes back to hold a council with his demons. And this brings in Belial.
Oh, Belial, the demon associated with lust, right? Known for the pre-flood Nephilim or giants.
Yeah, those guys. So Belial suggests, hey, let's tempt him with women. It worked on King Solomon.
And Satan's reaction is great. He basically mocks Belial.
He does. He knows Jesus is far too wise for cheap, fleshly tricks. Satan is a calculating strategist. He knows he has to target the ego.
So Satan instead offers this magical buffet in the woods, which fails. Then he pivots to geopolitics. He offers the wealth and military glory of the Roman and Parthian empires.
He's hoping to appeal to pride.
Which is the very thing that caused Adam's fall.
And Satan's own fall, for that matter. He tells Jesus, look, with this power, you could free the Jews and do immense good right now, no cross required.
Achieve God's ends using Satan's corrupt means.
Exactly.
But Jesus rejects that too, so it all culminates at the pinnacle of the temple in Jerusalem. Satan demands Jesus jump so angels will save him.
Yeah, he wants a theatrical miracle.
But Jesus refuses to tempt the Lord thy God, and Satan falls, defeated by Jesus' complete lack of ego. So what does this all mean for the devil? He's not just a cartoon villain here. He's depicted as a tragic, confused figure.
What's fascinating here is a specific, really heartbreaking quote from Milton's Satan. During their verbal sparring, Satan says, "The Son of God I also am, or was."
Wow, or was.
Yeah, it reveals this deep existential alienation. Milton portrays Satan as deeply jealous, totally unable to comprehend why God gives grace to flawed humanity, but offers no path to redemption for him.
Why does this human get to be the beloved son while I'm eternally damned?
Exactly. And this evaluation touches on the seemingly arbitrary nature of God's love, which is another concept heavily debated in atheistic philosophy.
If God is infinitely loving, why does the system require the eternal damnation of this one entity without any chance of repair?
Right. It makes Milton's Satan incredibly complex.
But, from Milton's high-minded philosophical debates in the wilderness, we have to transition to how this cosmic war trickles down into extreme modern-day paranoia for believers.
Because for practitioners, this isn't poetry. It's an immediate, terrifying reality.
Right. Going back to the Jehovah's Witnesses, they believe that in 1914, Jesus, acting as Michael the Archangel, kicked Satan out of heaven.
Making Satan a furious, trapped entity. The sources describe him as a rabid dog trapped on earth.
And this leads to the doctrine of 1 Corinthians 10.21. You cannot be partaking of the table of Jehovah and the table of demons, meaning there is absolutely no gray area.
None at all. Every object or action is either God's or a demonic trap.
And this results in an intense fear of inanimate objects and the supernatural. The sources talk about urban legends of demon-possessed Smurf dolls walking out of kingdom halls.
Or levitating beds caused by occult items brought into the house.
Yeah, and children being forced to throw away toy wizards. Think about living with that level of anxiety. If you have to burn a toy wizard or fear a Smurf, aren't you essentially giving Satan the omnipotence and constant presence that is supposed to belong exclusively to God?
This raises an important question regarding the psychological toll of this worldview. By attributing everything outside the religion to literal demons, the religion creates a perfectly closed loop.
Even validating it against other faiths, right?
Exactly. If a Catholic claims to have a vision of Jesus, or an evangelical speaks in tongues, JWs categorize it as a demonic trick.
So all false religion is essentially Satan worship in their eyes.
Right. It protects the doctrine perfectly, making members terrified to even investigate other beliefs. But ironically, it makes the devil the most active and powerful force in a believer's daily life.
Even attributing mental health struggles or suicide to demons, right?
Yes, the theology insists God is sovereign, but the daily psychology is entirely dominated by the omnipresent threat of Satan.
Wow. So, just to briefly wrap up this journey, we've gone from the Old Testament opposer, this literal auditor in God's court, to Milton's tragic tempter, and finally to the JW's cosmic rebel who forces God into a 6,000-year court case.
It really highlights how deeply humanity needs a narrative to process suffering.
It does. And I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. If both of these traditions require an incredibly active, almost omnipotent Satan just to explain why God allows suffering, does the figure of the devil actually exist entirely to protect God's reputation? If you were to completely remove Satan from these stories, humanity would be forced to reckon with a God who is solely uncomfortably responsible for both the light and the dark.
That is a profound thing to think about. Thank you so much for having me unpack this today.
It's been an absolute privilege. Until next time, keep questioning and take care.